Hello there, I'm Gloria Makarenko. So this week we celebrate rock stars of all kinds, in the kitchen and on stage. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, what the stats show about the state of religion in the city. And the Taste of Home wins a huge international restaurant award. But first, the fun and friendship found while jamming with a band. Now, there are many children taking music lessons in our city, and some of them are serious students learning the classics. Others may be dabbling for fun. Well, in between those two extremes is a new option. It's Vancouver's first School of Rock, and it's holding its grand opening November 9th. And co-owners Michael Granick and Al McInnes are here with us today. Mike, Al, hi there, welcome.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
So we all are familiar with the movie School of Rock. Is there a Jack Black character between you here?
I'd say Al's probably me.
Yeah,
Probably me.
What was the whole concept behind this, Al?
The whole concept is to get kids playing rock and roll music in groups on a stage together, putting them on real shows, real situations, get them rocking out in the real life. Ever since the pandemic, everyone's been separated, isolated. Let's get right back together and let's create some music and have some fun doing it.
Okay, but is it just kids, Mike? Or
No. We've got adult programs as well, so everything from 3 years old and up. And we've got a great adult program actually as well, and it's people that have just always wanted to do it or have never tried, and they're just like, yeah, let's try. I want to play guitar. I want to do vocals.
So what would you say the school offers that other music schools don't?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we do differently than everybody else is we integrate the lessons with the group performance. Some schools will do one or the other, some music stores will do one or the other, but we bring it all together. And then every 4 months, no matter what, we're doing a live show. We're getting these students up on a real stage in front of a real audience in a real rock venue, and they're gonna put on a real show and live the real experience. It's not just lessons, not simulation, it's the whole thing. We're gonna teach them how to play, teach them how to rehearse, and then teach them how to rock on stage in front of an audience.
Well, it is a new concept, or a different kind of an approach for sure. So how would you say the group dynamic sort of plays into it all? This, it isn't just about individuals.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you're learning music, instead of just learning in isolation by yourself, you have the opportunity to play with others, and that experience alone is a learning experience. And you get encouraged by the rest of the group to practice and to learn, and you're just having way more fun because you're actually playing with other people instead of just playing and learning one part by yourself.
Right, and how do you decide the repertoire? Who chooses the songs?
That's
Yeah, that would fall on me. I'm the music director, so I being an ex-professional musician myself, I know most of these songs off by heart to a certain degree. I know what works, what doesn't work, and what these kids or these students in general might be capable of. So we're not going to give them something that's way beyond their skill level, but at the same time, we don't want them to have something that's too easy. We always want them just out of reach, just challenging, expanding their musical skill, expanding their repertoire. So it falls on me to create the shows and then have these kids learn it and perform it.
Okay, but how do you factor in the skill levels? As Al's saying, if there's really a discrepancy, would you just put a different kind of group together, or you just change the
we have
approach?
a casting concept, and the cast, actually, Al can tell you a little bit more about the casting.
We kind of treat it more like a play as opposed to a rock band scenario. Not every kid's going to play on every song necessarily, because sometimes we might have 3 or 4 drummers in a group, and we don't need 3 or 4 drummers in a song. So based on the right song for the right performer at the right time, that's how we do it. Kids will be swapping out. It also expands their social skills because they're going to have to play with different groups of people. And it's just it's a great concept. There's over 300 schools now, so they know what they're doing, and we're following the guidelines, and so far it's been really great.
Okay, so you've moved into the old Yuck Yucks venue on Cambie, right?
That's true.
So
yeah.
How have you made it your own?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. We actually somewhat gutted the place, but we left a couple things. So we left the bar in place. That's actually turned into our office, which is kind of funny. And we've got a couple of remnants of chairs and a couple of doors and stuff like that. But basically, we've gutted the place and created a new cool space to learn. So we've got a lot of color. It's a colorful space. It's nice, it's welcoming, and it's fun. Yeah, we'll have to invite you down to take a look.
I would love to come down. It sounds awesome. What do you guys get out of it, Al?
I get to teach music to kids. I mean, I've always been a musician. I'm a hockey coach also in my spare time, so I get to coach kids. This perfectly melts the two of them together. I get to teach kids music, and I love both things so very much. And yeah, it's just so much fun. It's so much fun, so rewarding watching kids for the first time walk in, get to bang on drums, make not get in trouble for it. In fact, we encourage them to make a lot of noise, and to watch these young musicians actually grow into confident little beings. It's amazing.
Right. And what about for you, Mike?
You know, it's energizing to me. You know, when we were watching the kids come in and they're excited to learn and they're excited to get into the lessons, rehearsals, and play with others, that's really rewarding to me. So, you know, having a job that we get to actually have fun and watch people have fun, I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to both of you. We wish you all the success.
Thank you so
very
much.
Now, we have a beautiful province and a huge group of amateur photographers who send us their gems each week. This week, we'll start with this one. Rick Voice was out along the Vancouver harbour front and saw the fireboat come out of False Creek. Lovely image, Rick. Thank you. And Steve Marcinek took this uniquely framed photograph of the Grand Pacific Hotel in Vancouver. Nice work, Steve. Thanks for sharing. And finally, another unique vantage point. This one is inside the central branch of the Vancouver Public Library, looking up and out to the autumn trees. Great stuff. Sophia Karasuli-Milibar, thank you for sharing. And do send us more. Just email your favorite shots to us at bcphotos@cbc.ca. That's bcphotos@cbc.ca. Well, nature is our muse, that is for sure. CBC Arts is running a series that's called Natural Collaborators. And here's a profile of a musician who connects with plants and trees. Shane Mendoza literally connects to them with electrodes. Just watch.
Hey, I'm Shane Mendoza. I make plant music, and this is how I do it. Basically, we attach two sensors to a plant, for example, this canna lily, and the electrical output from the plant is then registered by a biofeedback sensor over here, and this is then responsible for distributing data in the system. Now, this is a modular synthesizer, of course, and we use something called control voltage, which basically is something similar to like MIDI, but it works with voltage rather than data. And what we do here is we take these patch cables, all these cables like that, and we patch them into points and make connections through which this data can be distributed. In my system here, I have this biofeedback sensor that is a quad random generator, which means that it picks up signals from the plant and then uses all the data in a randomly distributed way to then move along the patch. This triggers a couple of samplers that I have here, and it also triggers one analog oscillator, and I've got effects in the system, a couple of sample players and MIDI playback devices, and some Swiss Army knife modules that you can kind of use as, depending what you desire. Now, all this is connected to, at this moment, it's connected to my Moogs here, the Moog grandmother, as we know, is a mono synth, and we have the DFAM, which is a drum machine, but I'm using it as a synth voice in this stage. And what happens here is that the plant is controlling these two synthesizers. So if I play some music and turn up the volume here, you're going to hear what the plant's doing. So the plant is controlling the LFO. It's also controlling the notes, okay, via CV here into this oscillator, and it's also triggering envelopes. So that gives you the whole musical kind of movement that we're used to. And this similar thing is happening over here with the DFAM. So these are playing in tandem, and that's what you get. It's plant music in a nutshell.
Coming up, the state of trees around the world. Johanna Wagtaffe shows us the latest research.
Trees help fight climate change, but trees are also suffering because of climate change. So what does the latest research reveal about how the lungs of our planet are doing in a warming world? Well, let's start with the world's largest rainforest, the Amazon. With an estimated 390 billion individual trees, the Amazon absorbs a quarter of all the CO2 on land. That amount absorbed today, though, is about 30% less than it was in the 1990s because of deforestation. When the Amazon trees are burned or processed, the locked-in CO2 is released back into the atmosphere. And the latest research shows us that at current rates of deforestation, the Amazon forest will no longer be able to regenerate by the end of the century. And what about the lungs in our own backyards and cities? Well, we may need to start thinking about planting different kinds of trees now that can tolerate a warmer, drier climate. A new study in Nature Climate Change found that by 2050, about 3/4 of the species you see in and around your communities might not make it. Losing tree cover in urban areas means cities will become even hotter in our warming climate. The best strategy, according to the scientists, is to choose resilient species. So get used to a very different looking downtown future. Trees are resilient, though, and even though one tree just can't uproot itself and head on north, well, that actually is happening in a way. In the high Arctic, there are no trees. The tree line is what we call the edge of the habitat at which trees are capable of growing. Further north, trees can't tolerate the extreme cold, snow, and lack of available moisture. The Arctic is warming more than 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. And tree seeds are surviving and growing further north. On top of that, as trees cover a larger area of the Arctic, they're changing the color from barren white to a dark green that actually absorbs more heat, accelerating the warming process. Still, it's this survival instinct of those trees that's a poignant sign of their resiliency. And now you're Science Smart. If you have a question on your mind, send me an email and I'll try to get it answered.
Now, one of the driving forces behind our city's locavore movement has been given one of the world's top awards. Burdock & Co. was one of 8 restaurants in Vancouver to receive a coveted Michelin star. And Andrea Carlson is chef and owner. And congratulations. Welcome back to our Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Gloria. It's so great to be here.
What was that moment like for you?
It was pretty amazing. We weren't expecting it, and it was just such a thrill to be honored like that.
Well, and it was quite the room. I mean, I was sort of watching and trying to figure out what exactly is going on here. But, you know, as I looked at you and that lineup of chefs on the stage, the chefs with the stars, you were the only woman there. How did that feel?
Fantastic. I mean, I think it's, great representation for younger chefs in our city. Our kitchen team is, my 2 sous chefs are female, so it's very inspiring for them, and it's really inspiring for our front of house team, a lot of whom are female also.
Well, you were also a crowd favorite, I think. Just judging from the reaction in the room. Seriously, Andrea, you've done so much for the locavore food movement here. Just describe a little bit of the philosophy behind Burdock & Co.
Well, Burdock & Co. has always been focused on using our local small-scale organic growers and, working with products from our environment. So that is our passion, that's our core value, and that's what we strive to do every day.
I see. Now, I want to get to what you've assembled here for us today because it already is smelling amazing here. The aromas are incredible. So what's stirring on the stove?
We're just cooking up a dish from our current menu, which is, we call it the Under the Drying Rice Moon. Okay. So every dish has got some sort of rice component in it. And our focus is on this beautiful rice here, grown by Masa Shiroki at Granville Island Sake Company. He grows his rice for his sake making process. And we're also able to pair this beautiful Renaissance sake with the dish. So it's kind of a nice full circle experience. As well, the pine mushrooms in this dish are braised in this sake kazu.
So these are pine mushrooms.
These are pine
before
mushrooms.
and after. Okay. So
No. These are actually the pine mushrooms before and after here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then this is the leaves from the sake making process.
Oh, I see.
So we use this in addition to some sake and other braising items to braise off our pine mushrooms.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's amazing to me that we have rice grown in British Columbia and sake made in British Columbia as well. This is just, it is phenomenal, and I'm glad you're able to incorporate some of this. So would this be kind of like are we going toward kind of a risotto kind of a feel here?
Interesting. Yeah, interestingly, we have used this as a risotto in the past. Risotto benefits from a little bit a drying of the rice grains, so you take some of that moisture out.
Okay.
Usually letting it dry for a year is going to be ideal. So if we had Massa's rice a year from now, it would be perfect for risotto. Because this is fresh harvest and it's got quite a bit of moisture, we want to keep to this porridge texture. So much wetter, and we can incorporate all kinds of beautiful flavors, including this ginger from Salt Spring Island.
But look at this, look at this
I know,
ginger.
it's incredible. It's just gorgeous. It's hard to believe that this is
I almost want to crunch into it. Like it looks that fresh and gorgeous.
Yeah, it's so juicy and so lovely. So we just want a little bit of this that we're going to put a very, very fine little brunoise into our dish just to finish it off and give it some nice fragrance.
Good technique.
Yeah.
Way better than what I do at my house.
I may have forgotten my rasp today, so we're just going to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We're just going to put that in there as a brunoise. So we've got this. We've got our braised pine mushrooms as well.
Okay.
And we can finish off our dish here. We'll just do a quick little shave of some mushrooms. So pine mushrooms are so gorgeous. They're so fragrant. They really exemplify everything that is in the woods at this time of year. Just so
These scare
fabulous.
me. These scare
They
me.
should.
You can do some serious damage in the kitchen or on your fingers, right?
Absolutely. Everyone does. It's not, we're not immune to it.
Par for the course. All right.
You really have to focus on what you're doing. Don't let yourself get distracted by anything like a TV show, for example.
Right. Okay. Total concentration
Total
here.
concentration, or things could be dire. Yeah. So one of our little braised pine mushrooms on top. So this rice is very simple. It's very clean and elegant. Light flavors, which is key to this being successful.
I am so excited about this.
We've got a little brown butter samuel.
Well, and you've got a little bit. This is a kind of a minimalist approach too, isn't it?
It
Just
is.
every little flavor. Okay, brown butter, and
we're all
then
about the minimalism.
Okay.
We've got some braised burdock root because we want to always take every opportunity to focus on burdock when we can.
okay. What is burdock?
It's a beautiful root. It's commonly used in more Asian cuisines. But it is grown at Cedar Isle, which is a grain grower out on the valley. So that's what they're most commonly known
I
for.
know. So when you were deciding what am I going to name my restaurant, you just were going for something kind of out there so people would say, what is burdock?
I just love burdock. It's just one of those things. I've always really enjoyed it. I like the flavors, the nuttiness, the subtleness. So we've got the braised burdock. We've got an oil here that we've made from the green stem of the ginger root.
Yes.
So when it comes to us, it has these beautiful long stems on it. We actually just process that into a little oil.
I don't know whether to taste it or to take a picture of it. Frankly, it is so gorgeous. Like that is just beautiful. I mean, how much thought do you put into just where everything goes, or is it just sort of in the moment? This is where I'm.
It's fairly in the moment.
In the moment.
Yeah.
So, shall I try with spoon or fork? What would you do?
I would use a spoon, perhaps.
Okay, I'm going to try it. This is local burdock. This is probably my first burdock.
Okay.
Oh my. Andrea, it's sublime. It's sublime. It is just gorgeous. Like I'm getting you talked about porridge, but I'm still getting enough of the grain of the rice as well to appreciate that. My goodness, every bite I can take a little bit of a journey around the dish here.
Exactly.
With
So
the brown butter.
it's just focus, we're trying to bring out the pine mushroom, which is so delicate, not overwhelm it with other flavors. So it's just, we want to really highlight that at this time of year. They're such beautiful
Especially
mushrooms.
now, it's mushroom season. Now, what have you seen in your restaurant since the star?
We have seen an increase in business for sure. You know, a lot of those early and late reservations are definitely booking up that, you know, previously did not book as easily. So we're really delighted with that, and it's really exciting for the entire team. Yeah.
Cheers to your success.
Thank you
thank
so
you very
much.
much for lunch today.
Thank you.
If you want to go and see some live music, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings play the Commodore November 9th.
I'm alive on the prairie with my rider by my side.
And Tegan and Sarah will be in town. They'll play the same venue November 20th.
Hey, Grant Lawrence from CBC Music here, and this week I thought it would be nice to celebrate one of the most successful bands to blow up from the Maritimes in the last dozen years or so. They're called Always, with members originally from both Cape Breton Island and Prince Edward Island, and they first hooked a lot of music lovers with this song.
You've expressed explicitly your contempt for matrimony. You stood in loans to pay, it will not rest the alimony. We spent our days locked in a moon, pretend inside a bubble. And in the nighttime we go out and scour the streets for trouble. Hey, hey, marry me, aren't you?
From their first album released back in 2014, that was Always, spelt with 2 V's instead of a W, with their breakout song Archie Marry Me, a jangle pop wonder that swept indie rock circles right around the world and holds up to this day as an indie classic, featuring the captivating vocals of Always lead singer Molly Rankin, the daughter of John Rankin from the Rankin family fame. Now, Molly clearly did not pick up on the obvious Celtic music vibes, nor did she ride the family name, but it hasn't mattered. Molly and her band Always followed up their first album with an even bigger sophomore release in 2017 called Antisocialites. That's Always with Dreams Tonight, featuring National Film Board footage from Expo 67. And that's from their second record, which also won the 2018 Juno Award for Alternative Album of the Year. The record charted in Canada, Scotland, England, and cracked the USA's Billboard 200. And both of those first Always records made the Polaris Prize shortlist. So they're a critic's fave for sure. Always were on tour with the Strokes when the pandemic hit in March 2020, and they were, in fact, trivia fans, the last Canadian band I saw live before the shutdown. Always spent their time off the road well, writing and recording their new third album called Blue Rev. It just came out this month, and here's the fuzzy dream pop song that's currently climbing the CBC Music Top 20. That's Always with Easy on Your Own from the band's new album, Blue Rev. That song has hit the top 5 of the CBC Music Top 20, and that's the song that you need to add to your dream pop playlist for this week. I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music. I'll check in with you again soon.
Coming up, a profile on today's climate activists in BC and how they are spreading their message. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, it just began in Egypt, and this is where political leaders discuss and decide how to curb the impact of a warming planet. The scientific community says we need to hit net zero carbon dioxide emissions by the year 2050 to avoid catastrophic consequences. Well, people here in BC and around the world have been protesting against governments that are seen to be too slow to act against climate change. But how much is someone willing to risk to fight for something that they believe in? Joel Ballard spoke with local activists to find that answer.
It's been 2 years of devastation. Floods,
We had about 15 to 30 minutes to pack and go.
raging wildfires,
A lot of people have lost their homes.
a heat dome.
She didn't know the dangers she was in.
Our planet is getting hotter. Human activity releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, causing weather patterns to change and wreaking havoc on the environment. By 2030, the World Health Organization predicts it will lead to around 250,000 additional deaths per year. In the face of this disaster, some are taking to the streets, demanding action. But it comes at a cost.
This is the right fight, in the right place, at the right time, and I was the right person.
Most of the time, I don't feel like I have a choice. It's about the collective protection of society from an existential threat.
I believe that we will win!
Climate activism can be found across BC. But in the fight for climate action, how much are people willing to risk?
I was sentenced to 30 days in jail.
Well, I've been arrested at this point 13 times.
These two men are fresh out of jail. They risked their freedom to call for a stronger response to the climate crisis. But why? For Tim Tuccaro, it all comes back to his training as a doctor.
Climate change is the #1 healthcare and public health challenge facing us.
An SFU professor emeritus in health sciences, Tuccaro has been active in protesting the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion for years.
I was at the end of my rope. I had done everything I could, participated in the hearings, written these reports, and it had absolutely no impact.
So as we protest this pipeline project.
So he moved to the streets and forests.
If we stop emitting, we can prevent these health impacts in the future.
Probably best known for his time living high in the sky, blocking the Trans Mountain removal of trees in Burnaby. At one point, spending 10 consecutive days, 35 meters in the air.
If you're in my line of work and nothing else is working, and you're trying to protect your children and future generations, you can go a long way, some of which may not be legal, but that you know is right. That's why I'm here sitting in a tree, blocking construction up to this point, but they're getting close, so please come and help me.
On November 20th, 2021, Tuccaro refused to come down from his tree sit. He was arrested, charged, and sentenced. Zain Huq's story is similar. The Pakistani national came to Canada as an economics student, his climate-focused civil disobedience spurred by government inaction.
There's no way to say that what we are doing is going to work, but what people have realized is that everything that has been done over the past 30 years has empirically, objectively not worked.
He joined the groups Extinction Rebellion and Save Old Growth. They would block bridges and highways, glue themselves to roads, and demand an end to old-growth logging in BC.
That is a form of democratic engagement by non-violently causing a fuss and forcing this dialogue.
In April, their activations caught the ire of drivers and attention of the government. The Ministry of Forests told CBC at the time, "We will always respect the right of peaceful protest, but disrupting other people's lives undermines the progress made to protect at-risk old-growth forests." While blocking tree clearing by Trans Mountain, Huck too was arrested, charged, and sentenced. But because he's in Canada on a student visa, his activism brings greater risk.
I spent a few days in detention, immigration detention, and I was released. And my study permit was revoked, and I was found to be inadmissible in Canada.
Now he's in a state of limbo, at risk of being deported.
So we're going to the office of the Canadian Border Services Agency, where I have to report twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, because they suspect that I might be a flight risk.
And if you weren't to come here and if you weren't to check in, what would happen?
I would be in violation of my release conditions, and I would be taken into custody again.
Over the past few years, thousands of climate activists have been arrested across BC. And while activism can often achieve immediate results, like stalling the demolition of a tree, some experts say the greater impact comes from its message.
Civil disobedience is an act of public communication. It's a way of someone saying, I am so frightened or I'm so disturbed by an injustice that I'm willing to put myself on the line to try change your mind.
Harrison says activism can be effective, but it's a high-risk strategy.
I got kids in the car that are sick. Get the out of the road.
If you just aggravate the folks that you're trying to convince, it's not clear that it's accomplishing its goals and probably making things worse.
Ultimately, she says real change is going to take collective action, the will of the people, and courageous government policy.
It's up to us to fix it. And so do we have the courage? Do we have the guts?
We're outside the correctional center where both men served time. The memories still fresh.
They didn't give me shoes, and I had to get out of the van in shackles, in the rain, in my socks, just getting, and I was already cold.
Yeah.
So that was like, this is going to be very dehumanizing.
With the incarceration, the potential deportation, the financial costs, Huck says it's too soon to tell whether it was worth it. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because he never felt he even had a choice.
When our community is under attack, choice is a very odd thing to bring into the conversation.
As for Takaro, was it worth it?
Oh, absolutely. I would absolutely do it again. I may have to do it again.
The risks and the consequences willingly accepted. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Coming up, the latest census shows Canadians are less religious these days. Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, the latest census data appears to show that British Columbians are losing their faith. Yeah, right across the province, just over half of residents identified themselves as non-religious, and that's far more than the rest of Canada. As CBC's Sohrab Sandhu tells us, local religious leaders are split on how to interpret the finding.
No, it doesn't worry me.
For Reverend Carmen Lansdowne, the latest census data was less of a revelation and more of a confirmation of what she says has been a long-time trend, BC being ahead of the curve when it comes to secularization.
I think that people moving away from religious traditions has not so much to do with their spirituality or their faith, but has to do with a rejection of the harms that is caused by religious tradition.
Data released earlier this week shows more British Columbians identify themselves as non-religious, 52.6% specifically, compared to 34.6% Canada-wide. Archdeacon Douglas Fenton, however, believes the data may not be an accurate reflection.
The whole dichotomy between spiritual, I'm spiritual and not religious, or religious and not spiritual, is a false dichotomy for me, because I don't think that people are fully understanding or appreciating the question.
Father Douglas says churches all over are seeing declining numbers, but that does not mean lack of faith.
When we talk about who's religious and who's not, we're often measuring attendance at a religious place, a church, a mosque, or a temple, and not talking about the relationship that faith plays in an individual's life.
But BC Humanist Organization interprets the data differently.
Here in BC, we see people support science. I think we saw a lot of that in the trust placed in the public health officials during the early parts of the pandemic, in particular, the high uptake of vaccinations and things like that. And we also see a sort of secular spirituality, a deep connection to nature and valuing the environment.
Bushville believes the non-religious demographic will rise even further in the coming years. Sohrab Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
This is our Vancouver.
This is our Vancouver.
Sohrab, thank you so much for that story. Now, the cost of living, it's top of mind these days with gas prices and grocery bills on the rise. And this is a problem our country has lived through before. 60 years ago, CBC Television hosted a series called Making Ends Meet. Here's an episode from the archives.
The St. Lawrence Market, is this a good place to purchase food cheaply?
Oh, yes, yes. One item, for instance, Hamburg. It's not top quality, mind you, but it's edible and quite nutritious, and it's 25 cents a pound. Well, I buy about 20 pounds of this at a time and put it in the freezer and that.
What would it cost, say, in a supermarket per pound?
Well, a special is 49 cents.
Say 50%?
Yeah.
Mrs. Thomas, when you lived in Fort William, you did a lot of bulk buying. What did you buy?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is milk. And I bought skim milk powder. And I got it quite easily from my local grocer. I got it in 50-pound bags, and we figured roughly that our milk, a quart, cost 6 to 7 cents.
But this would really amount to a savings of $1 a day, $7 a week. The frustrating thing here, and I started out in November and December when we first came down to do some shopping, is that merchandise is in much smaller packages. And when you even ask for a 4-pound pail of peanut butter in some places, they look at you rather strangely. I think we worked it out once that the difference between purchasing it in small 4 or 8-ounce jars and buying it in a 4-pound pail, we saved about 50%.
How much do you think it costs you per week to feed your family?
$150 a month would probably be an overall average.
Any idea what it would cost you if you did not buy in the bulk, if you shopped in the conventional manner?
Well, it depends how conventional we want it to be. I like steaks, for example, but we don't have these very often. I think that you could double the food costs very easily with extravagant pastries, extravagant desserts, and delicacies.
Let me ask you this. If money didn't matter, would you still do as you do with regard to food?
Knowing what I know now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I think we're healthier.
For us, food isn't one of the things that we live for.
Lorraine Fairley saves money in her own kitchen by baking. Her young son, Mark, brings home the makings. Why do you send your young son to shop?
Well, it's his idea. I was painting the house last summer, and he asked me if he could take the list. And I probably looked as if I was never going to make it. And he went, and he's gone ever since. And he knows pretty much what we like anyway. And if there isn't something that I've asked him for, like salami, he'll get bologna.
What do you eat most of?
A lot of dairy products, a lot of milk and cheese. We eat a lot of eggs, a lot of bread and butter. And we've fruit at breakfast and usually supper, raw vegetables at noon, vegetables at supper, and salad at supper usually. And we eat meat about 5 days out of 7.
What foods do you avoid in order to save money?
Foods that have had a lot of processing, extra packaging.
Have you ever figured the exact amounts that you save on any one purchase or operation such as you've described?
But you make bread for exactly half.
What does it cost you a week to feed your family of 6?
Between $30 and $35.
And if you were to splurge and buy everything, how much more do you think it would cost?
I haven't the faintest idea. It's never occurred to me. If I had more to spend, I think we'd get more wine.
This is our Vancouver.
When we bring you stories here at CBC Vancouver, we have award-winning photographers out capturing the images that say so much, because the still images, they can add a different type of context and understanding to an event or an issue. So here are some of the latest from what happened this past week. And that's all for Our Vancouver for this week. I hope you can join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. Until then, bye-bye.